Islam?
Islam.
Islam?
Islam.
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 All meetings will be open and closed promptly according to the Circle 7. And love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Everyone please rise. Face the east. Please hold your feet at the 45. 5 on the left, 2 on the right, invoking the sacred presence of the 7 Elohim that created everything that ever was, is, and evermore to be. Please repeat after me. Allah,
Allah,
the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day. Through his holy prophet, Duality. Amen. Please hold your right hand over your heart while hearing the laws of the prophet. Islam or
Islam.
Salvation, Allah, unity, the uniting of the Moorish Science Temple of America, the divine constitution and bylaws. Act 1, the Grand Sheikh and the chairman of the Moorish Science Temple of America is empowered to make law and enforce laws with the assistance of the Prophet and the grand body of the Moorish Science Temple of America. The assistant Grand Sheikh is to assist the Grand Sheikh in all affairs if he lives according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, and it is known before the members of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Islam? Act 2, all meetings are to be open and closed promptly according to the Circle 7, and love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Friday is our holy day of rest, because on a Friday the first man was formed in flesh, and on a Friday the first man departed out of flesh and ascended unto his Father God Allah. For that cause, Friday is the holy day for all Muslims all over the world. Islam? Act 3, love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice must be proclaimed and practiced by all members of the Moorish Science Temple of America. No member is to put in danger or accuse falsely his brother or sister on any occasion at all that may harm his brother or sister, because Allah is love. Islam? Act 4, all members must preserve these holy and divine laws, and all members must obey the laws of the government, because by being a Moorish American, you are a part and partial of the government and must live the life accordingly. Islam? Act 5, this organization of the Moorish Science Temple of America is not to cause any confusion or to overthrow the laws and constitution of the said government, but to obey hereby. Islam? Act 6, with us, all members must proclaim their nationality, and we are teaching our people their nationality and their divine creed, that they may know that they are part and a partial of the said government, and know that they are not Negroes, colored folks, black people, or Ethiopians, because these names were given to slaves by slaveholders in 1779 and lasted until 1865 during the time of slavery. But this is a new era of time now, and all men now must proclaim their free national name to be recognized by the government in which they live and the nations of the earth. This is the reason why Allah, the great God of the universe, ordained Noble Drew Ali, the prophet, to redeem his people from their sinful ways. The Moorish Americans are the descendants of the ancient Moabites whom inhabited the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa. Islam? Act 7, all members must promptly attend their meetings and become a part and a partial of all uplifting acts of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Members must pay their dues and keep in line with all necessities of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Then you are entitled to the name of faithful. Husband, you must support your wife and children. Wife, you must obey your husband, take care of your children, and look after the duties of your household. Sons and daughters must obey father and mother and be industrious and become a part of the uplifting of fallen humanity. All Moorish Americans must keep their hearts and minds pure with love and their bodies clean with water. This divine covenant is from your holy prophet, Noble Drew Ali, through the guidance of his Father God Allah. Islam? Noble Drew Ali, founder, Moorish American prayer. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Amen. The Moorish Science Temple of America, Home Office, Grand Temple 13, 2522, Garrett Avenue, Baltimore, Maryland, 21218, 4824. Islam?
Islam.
Islam?
Islam.
Islam. Please be seated. I'll move forward in continuance with the additional laws. Questionnaire and additional laws for the Moorish Americans by the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Act 1, Grand Sheikhs and governors and heads of all temples, all businesses. Each said temple must be approved by the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Before acting upon by any members, let it be finance, property, or any line of life that will cause the members to sacrifice finance, etc., that will cause the support of any group of members. Any former officer that violates these laws is subject to be removed from his office under a heavy restriction, etc., by the Prophet or the Grand Sheikh. Islam? Act 2, all members are to attend their added meetings and their public meetings promptly. If a member is found standing around on the meeting period, shall be fined 50 cents on the first case, and on the second he'll be fined $1, which will go on your emergency fund. If a member is working, his monthly dues must be paid, and if he has money in the bank, he must subscribe for as much as he is able to the Moorish Uplifting Fund, because it takes finance to uplift a nation. Islam? Act 3, it is lawful and divine duty of every good member, if he is able in finance, to aid me in saving the nation. And if he does not, he is an enemy to the cause of uplifting his own people, and justice must catch you. Let it be he or she, according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, as I have the power invested in my hands, and I will have to enforce the law in order to save the nation. Islam? Act 4, all members, while making a public speech, must not use any assertion against the American flag or speak radical against the church or any member of any organized group, because we are to teach love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Islam? Act 5, all members must promptly attend their meetings and send their children to Sunday school, and the teacher must confirm himself to the questionnaire. And let every member exercise his 5 senses who is able to do so, because out from your Sunday school comes the guiders of the nation. Islam or Act 6 and 7 read as aforementioned in the Moorish Science Temple of America Divine Constitution and Bylaws. Islam or Having already risen in prayer, I give all praise to the great God Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. I extend the highest of honors to his illustrious prophet, Prophet Noble Duality, the founder of the Moorish Science Temple of America and the founder of the Uniting of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Extending those honors to his forerunner, the most honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, the founder of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, whom did indeed warn and stir up the nations. Islam or Extending high honors to the first appointed Supreme Grand Sheikh of the Supreme Grand Council and first Grand Sheikh of the Moorish Science Temple of America, Brother E. Miliil. Extending high honors to our current National Grand Sheikh, Brother G. Chernail, and his official staff. Extending honors to our current Supreme Grand Sheikh of the Supreme Grand Council, Brother R. Edwards Ill, and his official staff. Islam or Extending honors to the Grand Body of the Uniting the Moorish Science Temple of America, the Supreme Grand Council of the Uniting the Moorish Science Temple of America. Extending honors to Grand Temple 19, members and officials. Extending honors to the Moorish flag, the red flag with the 5-pointed green star in the center. These 5 points represent love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. These are the 5 highest principles known to man. Extending honors to the American flag, also known as the Stars and Stripes. This flag exists as a constant reminder that the European nations owe you, the Moors, with compound interest. Islam? This is also the flag of our birth. Islam Moors? Sending honors to you all who are in the sacred groves, because when man honors man, he honors his Father God, Allah. Islam? How's everyone in the Sunday school? Praise Allah, praise Allah. It's an honor for you to have you all here. I have the honor of being your Sunday school instructor for the late afternoon going into evening. Praise Allah. I want to take a reading from the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Divinely prepared from the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America, divinely prepared by the noble prophet Drew Ali, by the guiding of his Father God Allah, the great God of the universe, to redeem man from his sinful and fallen stage of humanity back to the highest plane of life with his Father God Allah. Islam? Declaring my intentions on page 3. Dear readers, do not falsely use these lessons. They are for good, peace, and happiness for all those that love Jesus. Islam or if there's anything good that you hear from me tonight, it does not come from me. It comes from the great God Allah. If there's any confusion, contradictions, or discrepancies, please put that on I, Brother H. Raniciel. Please do not put that on our Prophet Noble Drew Ali. And most certainly, do not put that on Allah, for Allah alone is perfect. Islam or praise Allah. I'd like to take a reading from, for those who have Qurans, please follow along. And for those who don't have Qurans, could we get some Qurans passed around? I'd like to take a reading from chapter 37, Holy Instructions from the Prophet, the Breath of Heaven. Anyone that doesn't have a Quran, please raise your hand. Again, that's on chapter 37 on page 44. I'm here, Islam, when you're all there. Praise Allah. Chapter 37, Holy Instruction from the Prophet, the Breath of Heaven. Vaunt not the body, because it was first formed, nor of thy brain, because therein thy soul resideth. Is not the master of the house more honorable than its walls? The ground must be prepared before corn be planted. The potter must build his furnace before he can make his porcelain. As the breath of heaven saith unto the waters of the deep, this way shall thy billows roll, and no other. Thus high and no higher shall thou raise their fury. So let thy spirit, O man, actuate and direct thy flesh. So let it repress its wilderness. Thy body is as the globe of the earth, thy bones the pillars that sustain it on its basis. As the ocean giveth rise to springs, whose waters return again into its bosom through the rivers, so runneth thy life from thy outwards, and so runneth it into its place again. Do not both retain their course forever? Behold, the same Allah ordained them. Is not thy nose the channel to perfumes, thy mouth the path to delicacies? Are not thine eyes the sentinels that watch for thee? Yet how often are they unable to distinguish truth from error? Keep thy soul in moderation. Teach thy spirit to be attentive to its good. So shall these, its ministers, be always to thee conveyances of truth. Thine hand, is it not a miracle? Is there in creation aught like unto it? Wherefore was it given, but that thou mightest stretch it out to the assistance of thy brother? Why of all things living art thou alone made capable of blushing? The world shall read thy shame upon thy face, therefore do nothing shameful. Fear and dismay, which robs thy countenance of its ruddy splendor, avoid guilt, and thou shalt know that fear is beneath thee, that dismay is unnamely. Wherefore to thee alone speak shadows in the vision of the pillow. Reverence them, for know that dreams are from on high. Thou man alone canst speak. Wonder at thy glorious prerogative, and pay to him who gave it to thee a rational and welcome praise, teaching thy children wisdom, instructing the offspring of thy loins in piety. Islam or
Islam.
Praise Allah. Surely Allah speaks the truth through his holy and divine prophet, Prophet Noble Raleigh Islam.
Islam.
Now, there's a couple of verses I want to hit in here and go back over, where it says, vaunt not thy body, verse 1. Vaunt not thy body because it was first formed, nor of thy brain because therein thy soul resided. Is not the master of the house more honorable than its walls? Now, we have a chapter called the soul of man, right? In the chapter of the soul of man, it describes the actions of the soul. What are the actions of the soul? Specifically. You're right, but specifically. And willing. Thinking, understanding, reasoning, and willing. So, you see a correlation between that, that chapter, that verse in that chapter, and here in verse 1 where it says, nor of thy brain because therein thy soul resideth. Islam Morris? See, soul has to actuate mind. In order for soul to actuate mind, it must be in contact with the plane of soul. Islam? All right? It says, the ground, verse 2, ground must be prepared before the corn be planted. The potter must build his furnace before he can make his porcelain. So, elsewhere in the Quran, because again, I want us to develop the habit of cross-referencing the Quran with itself, right? Give me another example in the Holy Quran and the Moorish Science Temple of America of that verse. The ground must be prepared before corn be planted. The potter must build his furnace before he can make his porcelain. Where else in the Holy Quran and the Moorish Science Temple of America do you have an example of that? There are quite a few. Islam, recognize.
When Jesus told them that they should make your hearts on fire for the sacrifices.
Islam. But so by doing so, how would that correlate with that verse in your assessment?
Because fire is what's needed to build the porcelain.
Islam.
Fire is for the sacrifice is what's needed to purify that.
Islam. Praise Allah. Anyone else? An example that's found in the Holy Quran and the Moorish Science Temple of America that substantiates that verse 2. Remember, this is Sunday school. We exercising our 5 senses when we're able to do so. Islam? I can tell you right now, y'all are thinking too hard. There's a really easy go-to answer. Islam, Brother Minister?
So I rise giving praises to Allah, highest of honors to his holy prophet, Nabi Raleigh.
Islam.
I believe in chapter 2, it talks about purity paves the way for love.
Islam. And who do we have as the manifest of those concepts?
In ancient times, John the Baptist, and in modern days, Brother Marcus Mosiah.
Islam. And that was a very loaded answer because he said in ancient times, which means in these modern days of times, that would be who?
Brother Marcus Mosiah.
And for love,
Prophet of Duality.
Islam. Islam. All right. Says, as the breath of heaven saith unto the waters of the deep, this way shall thy billows roll and no other. Thus high and no higher shall thou raise their fury. So let thy spirit act, O man, actuate and direct thy flesh. So let it repress its wilderness. What is an example in the Holy Quran of More Science of America of that verse? Because there's one verse that if you go to, it'll actually tell you who the breath of heaven is. And again, that's verse 3. Islam. Islam, you recognize? Okay.
Early Sunday morning, God soldiers will rise. The priests say that the disciples had stolen the body. Verse 3-4 in the chapter says, "And she, the holy breath, shall fill the earth, and air with holy breath, and open up the way of man, perfectness and endless life."
Islam. So in your assessment, how does that correlate with verse 3 of chapter 37?
From my understanding, she, holy breath, speaks into the earth, life, within the earth.
Islam. Praise Allah. Beautiful, beautiful. Anyone else? I think the wheel's still turning. Islam, Sheikh.
Islam has already risen. Chapter 3.
Islam?
Higher self and the lower self.
Okay.
Talks about, it says the higher self is human spirit, clothed with soul, made in the form of Allah. The lower self, the carnal self, the body of desires, is a reflection of the higher self, distorted by the murky deeds of the flesh. So, as it says, as the breath of heaven saith unto the waters of the deep. This is a description of the higher self speaking to the lower self.
Islam.
So we given our current questions. It says, what did the higher self say to the lower self? And one time when he met him, and the lower self, what was the lower self response? Something like that. The lower self said, I'm going to and from the earth, seeking whom I may devour. So, as it says right here, this way shall thy billows roll, and no other. Thus high, and no higher shall they raise their furies. So let thy spirit, which is the higher self, O man, actuate and direct thy flesh. So let it repress its wilderness. We know that the wilderness is a place, is a representative of a place where man goes to meditate on his higher self and the lower self.
Islam. Praise Allah. Beautiful. Brother Kimber, you got something for me? Islam. Islam, you recognize? Praise Allah.
I'm thinking 3.
Chapter 3?
No.
Oh.
Verse 3. That's the representative says to the words of the deep. This way shall I never grow another. I'm thinking gratitude.
Okay. Beautiful.
She, that's the trees return which capture from which arose. That's really important. It's streams to see. Spring. I see. Drug for heaven. That's that small, still voice that you have to listen to inside yourself.
Islam.
And you got to be grateful for those messages that you receive.
Absolutely.
There's the only way that you can obtain that is through your actions.
Islam. Islam. Praise the Lord. Morris, I would lend chapter 35, verse 5. So chapter 35 is a chapter of religion on page 42, where it states, who setteth bounds to the ocean that it cannot pass, and saith to the stormy winds, be still. And so, who is the person who is the being being referenced? You go to verse 1, it says, there is but one Allah, the author, the creator, the governor of the world, almighty, eternal, and incomprehensible. Now, in verse 3 on chapter 37, it's talking about, it says that this way shall thy billows roll and no other. Thus high and no higher shall they raise their fury. So that's setting, boundaries. Islam, what tool in chapter 5 do we utilize to establish boundaries? I was going to say, y'all got the answer in your hand. Y'all look like y'all had to pull it out the ether somewhere, isn't it? Praise Allah. It's the compass. Islam. Can anybody tell me anything about the anatomy of a compass? The anatomy, how is it constructed? Islam.
First, rise, giving all praise and honor to Father God Allah,
Islam.
the universe, and all honors to Lord Duality, and all honors to Moors and attendants.
Islam.
In the family.
Islam. You recognize me?
Usually a compass is in a circle.
Okay.
And as usual, kind of broken up into 4 cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west. Sometimes you have your 8 or 16 directions, north, south, so on and so forth. Usually has an arrow with some kind of magnetic properties to it to keep you north.
So in terms of the compass that we utilize to draw circles, right? So there's generally like 2 legs on it, right? Yeah, something?
No, I'm just
Okay.
see what you just said. You have one that has a point. Put it in the center. Open it up to its, whatever circumference you want it to be. You use it to draw a circle.
Islam. So based on those 2 legs, you can control the width of the circle, how narrow or how broad the circle is, right? And of those legs, one is immovable and one is movable. Islam. So symbolically representing, one is immutable or unchangeable, right? And one is mutable or adaptable or changeable. Islam. All right. You have that on the front of the questionnaire. You say our prophet, right? Okay. What do you say? Quran questionnaire. Oh, all right. I was gonna say, how am I not gonna have a questionnaire on Sunday school? Right here, right? Probably 2 legs, right? Right? 1 leg on what? Salvation, right? So that would represent what leg on the compass? Immutable, the unchangeable, right? And the mutable or the movable leg on the indicators of the world. Islam Moors? All right? So the Prophet Noble Duality and the lessons that he gives us is teaching us how to establish boundaries for ourselves. Islam? Praise Allah. And I'll just do verse 4, and then we'll get into our Sunday school lesson, the questionnaire. Verse 4, thy body is as the globe of the earth, thy bones, the pillars that sustain it on its basis. Can anybody give me an explanation of that verse? What are some of the things you hear in that? Tell me something about the globe of the earth, the globe. What are some things we notice about the globe? If we were looking at a globe in front of us. What are some obvious things that you see when looking at a globe? Islam, Brother Kimberman.
It's constantly in motion, and all the planets and stars circle around the purpose. Body is the same thing. Neutrons and protons circle around that other thing that can be.
Islam. That's the word they call geocentric, meaning that everything's, calculated from an earth-centered perspective. You know, to Camelback on your point, you know, you are the center of your own universe. Everything's rotating and revolving around you. Islam, you know, so, you know, it would make sense that, you know, all of us, right, to work on ourselves, because that'll determine your relation to the things that's rotating and revolving around you. You know, some other things about a globe that you would notice. Does a globe sit by itself? Because it's a ball, right? It's a sphere. Is it just sitting there? Or is it connected to something that's a basis, right? Which that word is also in the same verse, right? Okay, so the globe must have a basis. What is a basis? What does that mean? What is a base or a basis? Islam.
Having already risen, basis is like a foundation.
Islam.
Or a root.
Yes, yes. And these words are going to come up later in our lesson. What are some other things you notice about a globe? The earth is how much percentage of water? 80? How about the human body? So we're seeing some parallels here, right? Okay. Is the earth directly on a 0-degree axis, meaning that it will be perfectly upright? What is it? How is it? Not that far. No, we all be leaning like that. How many right-handed people in the room? How many lefties? Oh, you're so lucky. I'm kind of, I cut hair with both hands, but kind of restricted in other areas. But lefties, and I know the major Miss Ambidextrous, myself and the captain, all left-handed. In an average room, you'll find more right-handed people. The earth is actually tilted 23.5 degrees to the right. Islam? As a barber, I can tell you, like when I go to line people up, nobody's face is even. You know, that's why we're actually artists of illusion as barbers, because nobody's hairline is straight. It's an illusion that we create because everybody's eye is a little off. Everybody's ears are a little off. Nobody's actually perfect. And that's just a reflection of the earth. Islam, the earth is a little off. You see? Yes.
Kind of having already read, thinking also on the bones, the pillars.
Come on now. Look on.
Not necessarily thinking of like physical pillars.
Okay.
Like principles, pillars.
Come on.
Ideals. Things that help sustain a basis that you live by and structure.
What does the word sustain? What is that?
As in, what does it mean?
Yes, like what does it mean? Like what does the word sustain? Because it said it sustains it on its basis. So what does sustain mean? Brother Myrick, back? Islam, to maintain, support. Another word, an esoteric word for that is abide, meaning to remain within forever, right? But it says that bones, the pillars that sustain it on its basis. What do the bones do for the body? Help it be upright. Islam, how many bones in the human body? Come on, y'all more scientists. I know y'all know that one. 206, right? 2 and 6 is 8. 8 represents what in numerology? Infinity. Islam. So there's a how can I say? There's a parallel between being upright and, you know, linking yourself with infinity. Islam, because you're abiding in ought instead of naught, right? Which is why we're all down here to work that part of ourselves out. All of us. Islam? I didn't say some of us. I said all of us. Islam? And to help us to work that part out. Islam Moors? So praise Allah Moors. There's so much more in that chapter. If you can, in your own time and studies, get into that chapter. Islam? And, you know, be aware that the breath of heaven is Allah, right? Because, you know, the holy breath emanates from Allah. Islam? You know, and when we're able to access that, like you'll notice, like when you're angry, right, your breathing becomes more shallow. Almost like, you ever heard a dog pant? Right? Why does a dog do that? What is he doing? Why is he doing it? Islam sister? I'll defer to the sister. Islam sis, what you got?
First I rise, give the highest honors to
Highest praise. Islam.
Highest praise to Father God Allah.
Islam sis.
It's to cool himself down.
Exactly. And why does he have to do that?
To maintain his body temperature.
Islam. Because he can't really sweat like you can. Islam, all right? With us, we do it because, when you're breathing full lung capacity, like if you're doing a deep meditation breathing, you're actually accessing your diaphragm, which triggers your soul, right? Which raises your vibration for you to perceive different things, different realms, so on and so forth. When you get upset, you're actually using like about a quarter of your lung capacity, which cuts off oxygen to the brain, so you can't think as deeply. Islam, so accessing the holy breath is all important to access the art. Islam, praise Allah. So with that, Moses, we're gonna move on to our questionnaire. Islam. Now, Moses, we call this questionnaire the 101s, right? Right? Okay. Why do we call it the 101s? What is a 101? Anybody been to college? What is such and such 101? Islam.
The law division with the 101 is like the 401.
Okay. That was a nice parallel. I didn't see that one coming, but I can't argue with you. You are entitled to that. That's powerful. That's yeah, I like that. Anyone else? Islam Sheikh?
Introduction.
Introduction. To what, more?
To more science. More to Islam.
Specifically Islam, right? Let me see, Merriam-Webster's dictionary has it as 101, adjective, denoting an introductory course at college or university in the subject specified. You didn't even know you were sitting in a university, did you? Islam? It says, denoting the elementary or basic facts associated with the field or the subject specified. So what is the field that we're studying in the Moore Science Temple of America? What is our field of study? Self, also known as, okay, what is the methodology we utilize to study self? I'm gonna defer to the Sheikh. Islam. What would Islamism be, Sheikh? Islam. See, so more science is actually, a body of knowledge based on identification that separates and distinguishes so-called descendants of slaves from the institution of slavery and its awful legacy, mental slavery. That's actually more science, right? So it's a methodology. You're dealing with Islamism, that is, the practice of our particular way of life, of our faith. It's our faith in motion. Islam, all right? So we're gonna go forward with the Quran questionnaire, all right? As we see on the questionnaire, we have the star and crescent underneath which is the word Islam. We have the handpress of unity under which is the word Asia. Between that is written, the great meeting is on, Quran questions for Moorish Americans. You have one black star and crescent here, and then you have a white one here. And that one seems to be radiating light on the Prophet Noble Duality, who's holding a sister in his arms, and written across a womb is the word humanity. On his garment, it says Prophet Noble Duality. In the waters that he's stepping out of, it says the cares of the world, and he's stepping onto the solid rock of salvation, underneath which is written Noble Duality, founder, Moorish Science Temple of America. Islam? Starting on page 1, Moorish American prayer. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation by night and by day through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Amen. Quran questions for Moorish children. Now, on a Sunday school setting, you get the Moorish American prayer 3 times. Why is that? What is the significance of the number 3 in the Moorish Science Temple of America? You'll see this number pop up a lot. Significance of the number 3. Anyone? You can use your Quran. What examples of 3 do we have in the Quran? Come on, Mo. He like, I'm gonna try to let somebody else answer. Now go ahead, Mo, you got the answer.
In chapter 5, we have the 3-step ladder.
Islam. What?
Another chapter, it says, wisdom, good, and love. Another chapter, another 3 steps. Faith, hope, and fruition. Not belief.
Faith and fruition. Islam. You got something more?
The 3 planes, the spirit, soul, and matter.
Islam. right? So this is the theme that goes through, right? So, remember, each prophet teaches according to a certain method. Prophet Jesus taught according to parables. He spoke in parables. To the outer people, to his innermost crew, he gave them, the higher mysteries. It says that in the book of Mark. He says, to them I speak in parables, but to you I speak of the mystery of the kingdom of God. So there was two different teachings going on amongst Jesus. Prophet Muhammad taught in a reality form, meaning that, he taught in a real life scenarios. Do this, don't do this. It was very clear cut. There was no gray areas with Prophet Muhammad. Prophet Noble Drew Ali teaches according to science. Islam? So when you're dealing with Prophet Noble Drew Ali, you have to know which science is applying. What is meant by the word black? Black according to science means death. Well, what is the science? Political science. And when you get into that, you'll see how black according to science means death. Islam Wars? So you have to understand that with the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Never take anything he says at just face value, or like our national grant, she says, don't surface dwell. Don't be a surface dweller. Go deeper. Islam. Islam, which correlates with our brother here's point, into those planes. Exactly. So praise Allah more. So as is tradition in all Moorish Science Temples of America, we will go forward with our questionnaire. I will read the question. You all, respond in unison with the answer. Islam? Key 1, who made you?
Allah.
Y'all can put a little more zeal into it. I mean, make me feel like we're doing something here. Let's try that again. Key 1, who made you?
Allah.
Who is Allah?
Allah, Father of the universe.
3, can we see him?
No.
4, where is the nearest place we can meet him?
In the heart.
5, who is Noble Drew Ali?
He is Allah's prophet.
All right, let me stop right there. Go back to 1 and 2. Who made you?
Allah.
Who is Allah?
Allah is the Father of the universe.
Why are we using an Arabic word to describe God, or the great God? Loaded question, by the way. Islam. Yes, ma'am.
I'm not sure.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Is it the
She's stirring the ethers. She's like, come on, ethers. Go ahead.
the native language?
Of whom? Okay. You're in the ballpark. You're definitely in the ballpark. Yes. Okay, please read the section you're referencing.
The Moorish Science Temple of America deriving its power and authority from the great Quran of Muhammad to propagate the faith and extend the learning and truth of the great prophet of Ali in America. So again, the prophet or the great Quran of Muhammad recognizes the creator of the universe as Allah. So
Islam. Wonderful answer. Beautiful. Anyone else? Okay, now, is the word Allah solely Arabic? In other words, does that word belong to the Arabs?
no.
Why not?
Personally, I say no because I've heard it used in other cultures and knowledge, and it's a part of other lexicons.
Islam. Now, the prophet says that, the Moorish Americans are the descendants of the ancient Moabites whom inhabited the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa. Islam. When you do an extended study of the, the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa, you'll see that there was what they call, migrations that happened, right? You pick this up in what chapter of the Holy Quran and Moorish Science Temple of America when it talks about one group of people, a group of tribes went this way, another group of tribes went that way. What chapter is that? Islam. Okay. And so what two group of people are we talking about in chapter 47? Islam.
The descendants of Cush and the descendants of Ham.
Islam. Now, all right. So this is what we're going to get into later, but this is a lot broader than what you think. The word family, a lot broader. Yes, mother, father, children. Yeah, that's surface dwelling. But when you go deeper, you'll find out family goes also into linguistics, nations, so on and so forth. Right? From a linguistic, which is linguistic means Of or pertaining to what? Languages, right? From a linguistic sense. The family of nations belonging to the Asiatics are classed as what? Does anybody know? The family of languages that belong to the Asiatic race are classed as what? What are they labeled as? It's a hyphenated word. Okay. Islam. The Afro-Asiatic language group. Okay? Now, these are subdivided into what are termed Hamitic. The root word of Hamitic is what? So chapter 47, right? Islam. Hamitic. Then you have Semitic. What is it? Chadic. And I forget the specific way they named this, but it's pertaining to Egypt. Okay? So when you get to the Semitic portion, here you're talking about Arabic, Hebrew, Amharic, Ge'ez, etc. Right? When you get to Chadic, Chadic is like Yoruba, Hausa, Ewe, which looks like Iwe. And the Hausa, that's Hausa. And down in Egypt, that is your Meduneta, which are your hieroglyphics, right? And then you also had something known as a demotic, not demonic, demotic. And then you had hieratic, right? And then Hamitic almost parallels with the Semitic, meaning that Ham and the Semitic would have been Cush. Ham and Cush, they spoke the same language groups. Islam. But they call these the Afro-Asiatic language group because all of those languages are related, which means all of the people who speak those languages are related. Islam? So now when we're talking about Arabs and this type of stuff, well, you have to ask yourself, well, what is an Arab, right? Arabs are a hybrid mixture of Cushites. When you look at, just take this down real quick so I'll show you. Brother Major? Gratitude, Mark. Saudi Arabia, right here, right? The southernmost point of Saudi Arabia is called Yemen. This is Ethiopia. This is Yemen. Ethiopia is a swim or a canoe ride from the Arabian subcontinent. So it's right there, right? So we have been traveling back and forth across that for thousands of years, okay? So, gratitude, if you just put that back for me, I appreciate it. So that language does not belong to them. The word Allah does not belong to the Arabs, right? For those that think the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, brought the word Allah to the Arabs, does anybody happen to know Prophet Muhammad's father's name? Gratitude, Brother Major. Prophet Muhammad's father. Does everyone have this? Yes, sister, do you have? You good? Abdullah was the name of Prophet Muhammad's father. Now, the word, anybody know what the word Abdullah means? No? The name? Okay. Means the servant of Allah. It literally means the slave of Allah. That's why generally you don't see a lot of Moorish Americans that do the name Abdul or Abdullah, because we don't do principles that delude to slavery. Islam? All right? But the name means the servant of Allah. So if his father's name was the servant of Allah, then obviously the father existed before the son did. The father had to have known and or worshipped Allah. And his parents had to have, because they named him. Islam? So that name was not even new to them, but in and of itself, it does not belong to them. Islam? So Prophet Noble Drew Ali was returning to you back that which was known to you. Now, just really quick and I'll move on. All right? There are different variations of the name Allah. Right? So of course we have Allah. Right? In Hebrew we have Elo or Eloah. Right? A derivative of that obviously is Elohim, we know that. The Arabic version of that is Allahumma. Okay. Another derivative is El, E-L, right? Anyone familiar with Yoruba culture? Ifa, any of these practices? The highest concept of deity in Ifa is Olodumare, right? And Olodumare, which I'll write down. The prefix for Olodumare is Olu, right? Which comes back down to the Canaanite, the Canaanite Ilu, which is I-L-U, right? Which that goes to Canaanite, right? Same word. Ilu, Olodumare, El, Elohim, Eloah, Elo, Allah, all these are derivatives of the word Allah. And all these are in various different cultures, the same ones I told you about with, Arabic, Hebrew, the Afro-Asiatic language groups, and the people that, that speak those languages, all right? So again, this is not an Arab-centric or the word that they use. Anybody heard the term Arabesque before? Yes, Arabesque, all right? Arabesque means of an Arab quality, or kind of like Arab-centric, This is not what we're on at all, because we can demonstrate how the word precedes even when the Arabians were civilized. Islam, back even when Arabia was called the land of Canaan. We can go back that far with the name Allah. Islam was? So Prophet Noble Drew Ali was, opening up thousands of years worth of history by just giving you those two questions. Islam, are there any questions on this? Islam.
Not necessarily a question, but just a comment.
Please.
Waking up and just learning more about Prophet and
Yes.
what he presented about who we are, and then looking back at the old films and like a lot of the Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
A lot of Arabesque.
A lot of
scenery.
Or what there's another word which is Moresque. You look in your older dictionaries, you'll find this. You'll find that word when it comes to a lot of architecture. Moresque type of architecture. Moorish, right? Then when the Moors got, overthrown, they start calling it Arabesque. They say, supplanting, right? A lot of your, anybody seen any pictures of the architecture in Mexico? You've seen this? It's Moorish, completely. Well, how'd that get there? And don't tell me the conquistadors brought that. That's been there. Islam, all right? So praise Allah, let's move forward, all right? 5, who is Noble Drew Ali? Okay, y'all can wake up now. 5, who is Noble Drew Ali?
He is Allah's prophet.
Praise Allah. 6, what is a prophet?
A prophet is called Allah manifested in the flesh.
7, what is the duty of a prophet?
To save nations from the wrath of Allah.
8, who is the founder of the Moorish Science Temple of America?
Noble Drew Ali.
9, what year was the Moorish Science Temple of America founded?
1913 AD.
10, where?
Newark, Jersey.
11, where was Noble Drew Ali born?
In the state of North Carolina, 1886.
12, what is his nationality?
Moorish American.
13, what is your nationality?
Moorish American.
Prove it. Nationality Moorish American, right? That's how y'all just answered, right? Prove it. What can you go to in the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America that substantiates our nationality as being Moorish American? Because we're going to get asked these questions. You're going to get challenged on it. You're not going to be able to just say a thing. People just believe it. And you don't want to start going to outside sources, because then what you're doing is you're giving those outside sources power. There are people that say the word Moor means black. You believe that? Don't that contradict your lessons? Right. So we Moorish American, prove it. What does it say in our Quran? Islam.
I think this is chapter 47.
Okay.
Egypt, the capital of Empire, the dominion of Africa.
Islam. So what do you have that you see?
The inhabitants of Africa are the descendants of the ancient Canaanites from the land of Canaan. Old man Cush, his family are the first inhabitants of Africa who came from the land of Canaan. His father Ham, his family were second. Then came the word Ethiopia, which means the demarcation line of the dominion of the Mexican. First true and divine name of Africa.
Okay.
Dividing over the land between the father and the son. The dominion of Cush, northeast and southeast Africa. And northwest and southwest was his father's dominion of Africa.
Okay, pause there. So that's going into your Hamitic aspect, right? Okay, go ahead.
In later years, many of their brethren from Asia and the Holy Lands joined them. So that's the rest of it.
Islam. That's right.
The Moabites from the land of Moab, who received permission from the pharaohs of Egypt to settle and inhabit northwest Africa. They were the founders of the true founders and are the true possessors, pardon myself, of the present Moroccan Empire, the Canaanite, Hittite, and Amorite brethren, who sojourned from the land of Canaan, seeking new homes. Their dominion and inhabitation extend from northeast and southwest Africa, across the great Atlantis, even onto the present North, South, and Central America, and also Mexico and the Atlantic Islands, before the great earthquake was caused the Great Atlantic Ocean.
There you go, right there. Now I'm gonna show you how powerful that is and how that works in international law. How did the pale-skinned Jews acquire the state of Israel? What did they use to substantiate their claim? Say again? Oh, definitely. But like they used some wording they had to use. Like, cause you can't just go into slaughter when we're here. Not in the modern era. You gotta, because it's courts and stuff. You know what I'm saying? But you're right. They did use the sword with some help too, right? But what did they use? What wording did they use to substantiate the claim? Remember, they're Jews. So what did they use? Okay, so Islam. Okay, Islam, brother.
They would trace their lineage.
It's a little louder.
Trace their lineage.
How do they trace the lineage? How? Using what?
Historical records.
What historical records? You're getting there. You're clearing away the brush. Remember that. I keep saying, remember they're Jews. What did the Jews read?
The Torah.
Yeah. You couldn't have said that in the state of Israel, brother. You might find yourself in a cell. But yeah, the Torah, right? Right? So they have the Torah, and then they have their, the writings of the prophets, and then they have their rabbinical text. The rabbis wrote the Talmud and the Mishnah, but mainly the Torah, right? Does the Torah belong to the pale Jews? No, the Torah belongs to you. That's your book. Islam? But they supplanted us because we don't want to be that no more. We want to be Negroes, blacks, and colored. So we leave a lot of stuff on the table. Okay? So they used that. They got up with Britain and the United States of America, unfortunately, because again, we're not at the table. So a lot of stuff takes place, but we're not at the table, right? They got with them and they backed them militarily against Palestine to take that land, which wasn't their first choice. Islam? Uganda was their first choice, right? But Idi Amin and all them, powerful Africans, they wasn't going for it. Then they went to Kenya. The Kenyans weren't going for it, right? Then they, petitioned Palestine. The Palestinians like, well, we're of the same faith. Come on, and you're being persecuted. Come on. And they took a little land. Then they took a little more. Then they took a little more. Now the Palestinians almost don't have. Palestine don't even really exist. Islam. And there was a organization. Anybody remember Yasser Arafat? Y'all know that name? Yasser Arafat. You should research this. This is important, especially to what we're demonstrating as Moors, right? Yes, sir. Yasser Arafat. Oop. That's a Y, y'all. Pardon me, I'm left-handed. Let me get it right. There we go. Okay. As our brother stated, he was a leader over the organization called the PLO, which is the Palestinian Liberation Organization. Okay? Palestine didn't exist as a state after the Israelis came in and did what they did. So Yasser Arafat and other Palestinians got together and formed the PLO. The PLO was able to represent Palestinian interests in the United Nations without a Palestinian state existing. There's a message there for us. So you have a Moorish Science Temple of America, but there's no Moorish land. And I'll leave that on the table because that's a little deeper, right? That's a rabbit hole, but time doesn't afford us. So using that as an example, the Moorish Science Temple of America can represent the interests of Moorish Americans in this day and time. Precedents have already been set. Islam? All right? So, so you have to be able to substantiate your claim using your holy text, right? So anything about you being Moorish American, you got to be able to go in your Quran and prove it. Because you might have to bring this up in front of the UN and demonstrate. Islam? All right, praise Allah. Let's move forward. 14. Nice. 14. Why are we Moorish Americans? 15. For what purpose was the Moorish Science Temple of America founded?
For the uplifting of fallen humanity.
16. How did the Prophet begin to uplift the Moorish Americans?
By teaching them to be themselves.
What does that mean? By teaching them to be themselves. What is yourself? And use the Quran. Don't lean to your own understanding. What is yourself? Where are yourselves described in the Quran? Islam. Let's get back. Recognize.
Go to chapter 3.
Okay.
And it tells you about the higher self and the lower self.
Islam. Now, what does it say about the higher self and the lower self? A lot, right? You don't have to read the whole chapter, Mo. Just give me some highlights. Let's take the higher self. What does it say about the higher self?
Higher self, the mother of virtues, harmony of life,
You answer well. Now, what does it say about the lower self?
the lower self is what the higher self is not.
Islam. Islam. So of the two, which would you say would be your true self? Okay. Why? I know what you're trying to do. Islam. Well, you can inject that. We honor that.
Positive and negative. Inside that, what you consider the negative side or the dark side, there is a spot of light, and vice versa. So uniting, right? That's that man being spiritual within.
Islam.
One has to study both themselves, right? So that the spirit can activate the soul.
Islam. Praise Allah. Beautiful. Which one of them is measured up by time?
The lower self.
Why? When did man adopt the lower self?
The lower self didn't come into play until man became his soul.
Islam. And then what happened?
So developed a nature, and then from that nature sprang forth. From that nature, fleshly things came forth, and that became forward and man.
Islam. So a nature that sprang forth from fleshy things, as the record would say, right? So it's measured up by time. Now, this higher self, what have we to say further about the higher self? Like, what other attributes, what other names can we call the higher self?
Allah and man.
Islam. Allah and man. Anything else? We talked about something earlier relative to the lungs. Islam. The holy breath. Islam. Islam. Good. Islam, huh? You jumping ahead, but go ahead, praise Allah. Go ahead.
I also want to mention King was finished in regards to being oneself.
Please.
I refer to chapter 1.
Please.
Man cannot die. The spirit man is one with Allah, and while Allah lives, man cannot die. When man has conquered every foe upon the plane of soul, or the sea will have full open out, will have unfolded in the holy breath. The garment of soul will then have served its purpose well, and man will need it nevermore, and it will pass and be no more, and man will then attain unto blessedness and perfectness, and at one with the law. So
Praise the Lord.
to the true essence of self.
Absolutely.
The true self is. So kind of going back to the demonstration as before, as far as one not being concerned with the one that is measured by time and recognizing and observing the true self.
Islam. Now this is kind of going into a demonstration our Supreme Grand Sheikh gave us. There's certain things when it came to the realm of the manifest that became necessary for you to chart your growth, right? So you need a lower self in this plane because you need to be able to chart where you're at, right? So it says, if man would know, he must himself be right. But how will you find that out if you don't have a lower self? You need something to test that. Islam? Also with that, you have to have time. Because time charts your rate of progress, right? So, in Japanese culture, and I'm loosely saying this, Sheikh Ashe Bey is our resident. I'm glad she isn't here, so if I misquote, it's no problem. But they had something where it said, like, amongst the samurai, that you would try each day to be a little bit better than you were the day before. Just a little bit. But if you do that every day, put that work in, a year's time you look past, you might be a different person. You understand? But see, it's time, it's our lower self, all these things that must exist in this plane. We're not going to reach a state in this plane where we're not going to be tried by our lower self. That has to exist for us to realize, and to actuate the spirit. See, spirit in this plane even has to be taught, right? Because it's out of its natural element, right? So we have a tendency to forget, that we are one with Allah, right? So things will pop up in our life to try us, to see where we're at. And then during those times, you might have what we would call failed the test, but there's no failure for the human soul. You can't fail. It was just a learning lesson. Islam? Praise Allah. Let's move forward, right? 17. What is our religion? 18. Is that a new or is that the old time religion?
Old time religion.
19. What kind of flag is the Moorish?
It is a red flag with a 5-pointed green star in the center.
Islam. And the Prophet, he worded that very masterfully because there are other kinds of flags that look like this, right? So it had to be defined what kind of flag is the Moorish. And in this context, he didn't say Moroccan. Islam, and not that we're tripping on that because the flags look identical, right? But it means something different to each nation, right? Each nation has a right to determine and to define what things are to them. To us, it means the 5 points represent love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. To the Arabs who are in Morocco currently, it represents the 5 pillars of faith and the seal of Solomon. And we got degrees on Solomon, but our prophet didn't say our star represented that. Islam? Praise Allah. 20. 20. What do the 5 points represent?
Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice.
21. How old is our flag?
It is over 10,000 years old.
22. Which is our holy day?
Friday.
23. Why?
Because Friday is the day on which man was formed in flesh, and it was on Friday when he departed out of flesh.
Can anybody explain that about Friday? Anybody? Floor's open. You don't? Brother Kimber Bay, I know you got something for me, Mo. You never let me down, Mo. You be locked and loaded every meeting. What you got for me?
Friday being the fifth day.
Right.
Saturday was considered to be the Sabbath. So, from Saturday to Thursday, or from Sunday to Friday, right, is when most usually Bible is going to be. There's a pretty
Islam.
man being the fifth grade said that Friday. Somewhere I heard some brother say that Friday actually means to spawn, to bring forth. And from an esoteric point of view, you can say that this is where life began.
Okay.
On a Friday.
Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. There's a text known as the Lost Books of the Bible and the Forgotten Books of Eden. And in chapter 9 of that book, they covered the death of Adam. Now, Adam, we have Adam and Eve in our questionnaire, right? But there's a unique answer which we're going to get to. And that the question is asked in a singular fashion, but the answer is given in a plural. Y'all noticed that? Okay, so just keep that in mind. But it says, when Adam had ended his commandment to Seth, which was his son, his limbs were loose and his hands and his feet lost all power. His mouth became dumb and his tongue ceased altogether to speak. He closed his eyes and gave up the ghost. But when his children saw that he was dead, they threw themselves over him, men and women, old and young, weeping. The death of Adam took place at the end of 930 years that he lived upon the earth, on the 15th day of Barmudeh, after the reckoning of the epoch of the sun, at the 9th hour. It was on a Friday, the very day on which he was created, and on which he rested, and the hour which he died was the same as that at which he came out of the garden. Islam? So there's a lot of keys in that last verse I just read. The day in which he was born, came in the flesh, they departed out of flesh, and the day he was cast out of the garden. Right? Friday bears a lot of symbolism for us. Islam? But don't look at it from a Eurocentric 6,000 years ago Adam and Eve. That's not what our prophet is talking about. Right? These were archetypes that exist. Right? When you have Adam, which I'm kind of jumping, but when you have Adam and Eve, you can get into Osiris and Isis. They were Adam and Eve types. You can get into Atum, was it Atum and Lilith? It's varies through different cultures. You can trace this Adam and Eve type story. Islam? All right, but let's move forward. It says 24. Who was Jesus? 25. Where was he born?
In Bethlehem of Judah, in the house of David.
26. Who were his father and mother?
Joseph and Mary.
27. Would you give in brief the line, genealogy through which Jesus came?
Some of the great fathers through which Jesus came are Abraham, Boaz by Ruth, Jesse, King David, Solomon, Hezekiah, and Joseph by Mary.
Has anybody done the research on those names mentioned in that answer? No? Of course, Brother Kimbrough Bay. We're not even shocked. Praise Allah. What type of qualities do you have of the people of those names? Who are these people? Like Islam?
As you already mentioned, some of the qualities that some of our ancestors were mentioned here, most of them was kings and queens.
Islam. What else? You got kings. The brother said queens. Anyone else? Islam?
Those were the main ones that I think that were the ones with the Jews was drifting. Those were the ones that get back on track.
Pulling them back.
Kept it in a polythesis.
Islam. So there's an important point to point out. We often say that we're descended from kings and queens and so on and so forth. But Prophet Noble Duality gives us an example of a type of genealogy that we're connected to. And then when you read through all of them, like you said, kings, queens, you'll see wealthy landowners. They put down Solomon as one of the wisest people that ever existed. So wisdom, David, warrior, right? Fearless warrior, right? Who was also a mystic and also a very spiritual individual, but also happened to be a warrior, and also happened to be a kind of, according to the story, a kind of flawed individual, but Allah still chose to utilize to get something done. Sound like us, don't it? Kind of flawed, but Allah is using us to raise our people. Islam wars, Hezekiah, a leader, a king whose time was up. Allah was going to call him back. He was like, if you just give me a little bit more time. He said, why do you want more time? I want more time to worship you. He didn't want more time to travel and, go see this and go do, nothing, no folly. He wanted more time to worship Allah, and Allah gave him more time. Islam, right? So all of those, each one of those names are independent studies, and Abraham is who they call the father of many nations. Islam. Abraham's actually on your nationality card, whether you know it or not, but that's another lesson. 28. Why did Allah send Jesus to this earth?
to save the Israelites from the iron hand oppression of the pale-skinned nations of Europe who were governing a portion of Palestine at that time.
29, how long has that been?
About 2,000 years ago.
30, what was the nationality of Ruth?
Ruth was a Moabite,
31, what is the modern name for Moabites?
Moroccan,
32, where is the Moroccan Empire?
northwest of Mexico,
33, what is the modern name for Amexem?
Africa.
Where can you find that in your Quran?
I'm already read. We are ready to chapter 47.
Yes, you did.
Looking for the portion where it says it correctly. It says, oh yeah, his father.
What verse?
Chapter 40, chapter 47, key 3. Now
Verse
his father Ham and his family were second. Then came the word Ethiopia, which means the demarcation line of the dominion of Amexem, the first true and divine name of Africa,
Islam.
the dividing of the land between father and son.
Islam. Anybody ever heard of the Berbers before?
Islam.
The Berbers? Do the Berbers call themselves Berbers?
I don't think so.
No, they don't. That's actually a Roman designation, right? Berber actually means barbarian. So obviously they wouldn't call themselves that, right? They call themselves Amazik, right? Write it down. Right? In their language, it looks like
Oh yeah.
it would look like that right there, right? But around this portion of it creates like an X type of sound. So there's a connection between this word the prophet gave us as of Amexem and this word of which the Berbers call themselves. Now, what landmass do the Berbers inhabit?
Northern Africa and South Europe.
Islam. Sounds like the area of the Moors, doesn't it? Islam. Praise Allah. Right? Yes. Yes.
I have to send you the documents. I kind of mentioned it in previous Sunday classes.
Okay.
About the Berber, under the title of Berber, again being a Roman designation, it's a lot of Moorish activity documented, well documented under that title. Not to send you some of those documents as far as
Islam.
our activities, even up to the 1700s in the Mediterranean area, and even on to the Americas.
Praise Allah. I would love to see it. You know, that's one thing you have to give the European nations. They keep excellent records.
You know what you're looking for?
Yeah, he's like a biological supercomputer. This boy, he writes down even his devilishment. Islam. So it's an interesting point. But 34. What is the title given to our ruler in Morocco?
Sultan.
Somebody tell me something about the word sultan. What kind of title is it? And when did it come about? Is it a secular title? Like president? Has it always existed amongst the Moors? Yeah. Very critical eye there. She's like, nah. Anyone? No? Sultan is a religious title. But what does religion mean to the ancient Asiatic race and nation? Is there a separation between church and state to our forefathers? Was there ever? Islam.
Not necessarily we operate under a theocracy.
A theocracy, Islam, right? Which is, which was a government with the Most High, the Creator, at the head of it, right? Islam.
Also, kind of correlation between the American flag and Moroccan flag and how the two are set up.
Hold on, the American flag and the what kind of flag?
Moorish. Right?
Oh, gratitude.
Part, so,
Islam.
I think when you mentioned that, I think a minister plenipotentiary.
Oh, you working, brother? What is a minister? Talk that talk, brother. He gonna make me pull my dictionary out. My Black's Law third edition. What does a minister plenipotentiary do?
I know it is a title and station that a lot of the quote-unquote forefathers held. George Washington, for example, was a minister plenipotentiary.
Not George Washington. Same era. Not George, not good old George. They couldn't see a minister plenipotentiary has to travel on behalf of the government.
Right.
At that time, they would have taken George out. because of what he did with Britain.
Was it Franklin?
No. Yes. So it was supposed to be Benjamin Franklin, right? But he got sick. So it was a European named Thomas Barclay.
So I wasn't sure if Thomas, because there was the certain document that's on top of it. There was a ministerial penitentiary, and then like the consul, not even necessarily the consul, he was just the agent,
Right.
But he wasn't necessarily there, and I wasn't sure if that was talking about.
So let's define these just for clarity. What are the differences between an ambassador, a consul, and what you're saying, minister plenipotentiary? Anybody know? What does an ambassador do? He or she deals with what? What kind of negotiations? Anyone? Ambassadors deal with matters dealing with diplomacy. Okay? A consul deals with matters concerning commerce and trade. Okay? A minister plenipotentiary executes the seal of a government on behalf of the government on treaties, and so on and so forth. Islam? So in other words, he has the complete authority, given to him by the government, by the Constitution, to execute, a seal, engage the entire government into an agreement on behalf of the government. That's a lot of trust. Islam, because once that seal is placed on there, you're bound. It's kind of like signing something and then being like, I didn't know that, those terms were in there. It's too late. You already signed it. Islam, all right. So that's the difference. And then when you get into ministers, so on and so forth, we have ordained ministers in the Uniting of the Moor Science Temple of America. Shit, can you grab that law dictionary, Ma? I didn't think we was going here, but that's your fault.
Yeah.
You brought the word up. Yes, right underneath it. One of the oldest ones over there. There you go.
While he's doing that, to my understanding, one of your titles is Grand Interpreter.
Islam, no doubt. But in this context, ordained minister would be, we also hold that title as well. So, what kind of governments have ministers? Anyone? Okay, let me just read through this. Minister, one of the highest functionaries in the organization of civil government, standing next to the sovereign or executive head, acting as his immediate auxiliary, and being generally charged with the administration of one of the great bureaus or departments of the executive branch of government, otherwise called a cabinet minister, a secretary of state, or a secretary of a department. Islam? All right. Then it goes in international law, an officer appointed by the government of one nation as a mediator or arbitrator between two other nations who are engaged in a controversy. Sounds like an ambassador almost, right? With their consent, with a view to effecting an amicable adjustment of the dispute. A general name given to the diplomatic representatives sent by one state to another, including ambassadors, envoys, and residents. They're also called ministers. Islam? So you'll see, cases where, there are three ministers in this temple. Sheikh Ar-Hakim Bey, Sheikh T. Ranisia, and myself. You might see times when we'll travel, we'll go represent the temple, but at other temples, or it could be city government, whatever. But that's in an official capacity. We have to be careful. Anything we say represents the government of the Uniting of the Moor Science Temple of America. Islam, so we're actually trained in ministerial skill. What to say, more importantly, what not to say. Islam, because you can bind your organization to something without. I'll give an example where that's being used right now. People don't realize it. Y'all seen Young Thug's situation going on right now? And the RICO Act and all that kind of stuff, right? Anybody read the charges? They pretty much got him the head of a criminal conspiracy. All right? So, of things that he didn't do himself. But people, allegedly, right? But where his, people that were, a part of the organization were doing particular things that they're putting on him, right? Because he's one of the founders of the organization, right? So what they're doing is when you read through the indictment, it's a particular language that's being used. See, the Prophet Noble Drew Ali teaches us in a particular language, right? That's what Sunday school is about. It's loading up a different vocabulary. So when you have to demonstrate from a Moorish perspective, you use your own vocabulary. Islam Moors? That's very important in international politics, because it's what sets you apart as a distinct nation. Islam? All right? So this is not supposed to look Arab, because we're our own nation. Islam? Praise Allah. All right. And back to Sultan. Sultan is a religious title. The title Sultan came about after Prophet Muhammad passed form. There were 4 rulers after him. They were called the Khalifas. The word Khalif or Khalifa means successor, right? They were also called the Rashidun. Rashidun means the rightly guided ones. They say everything after that kind of went down because the Muslims started fighting each other and so on and so forth, right? And the title Sultan came about as a means of reorganizing the Islamic empire, right? And it was a religious as well as a political title.
Just
Please.
continue to grow our understanding in the demonstration of our faith, being Islamism. Is that is that rift, which you just explained, where we get the Sunni and Shiite?
That's exactly where that rift happened. So that, Prophet Muhammad passes, 3 of the Rashidun were arguing about who was going to be in power while the Prophet's body laid, or they didn't even bury him yet, right? Ali, who was his cousin and son-in-law, actually was, tending to the Prophet's burial rites, While the Prophet was alive, it was, pretty much the contention that Ali should be the next successor. But he was so busy attending to, Prophet Muhammad's burial rites, a vote was taking place and they put a man named Abu Bakr in as the first caliph. You understand what I'm saying? So, that caused a rift. And the word Shia, the word Sunni means traditional. The word Shia means to break off. So that's what happened. They literally broke off. But that's something that the Quran, the great Quran of Muhammad says don't do. It says do not break into little groups and dispute amongst yourselves. And the word that's there in the original language is Shia. So it says don't be Shia literally. But they did it anyway. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I hope that answers your question. Praise Allah. All right. Let's go to 35. Where do we get the name Jesus?
From the East.
36. What does the name Jesus mean?
Jesus means justice.
37. Look, real quick. What is the difference between justice and vengeance? What's the difference between justice and vengeance? And the Bible says, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Right? But what is the word? What is the difference between the two? Justice. Anybody? Somebody? Islam.
Vengeance is done from a selfish.
Islam.
Justice is done from righteousness.
Islam, or a divine point of view. Exactly.
Vengeance is done out of hate. Justice is by
Islam.
and understand.
So it sounds like it's coming out of the two selves, right? Higher self and lower self, And, justice, yes.
In our Quran, it says that in order to be just, you have to be able to heal without that action.
Islam. And that's a life lesson, in the thick of something, right? To be able to not descend to meanness while it's going on, to remember your lessons, right? That's why, you'll notice before your name on your nationality card, before your first name, there's a word. What is it? Islam, brother or sister, right? So, that's why, the Prophet Noble Duality made us family to one another, right? Because we're to exist to remind each other of our lessons, to remind each other that we're better. Islam, you're better than that, Mo. Raise it up, Mo. Raise your thoughts, Mo. Islam, that's what this is about, because at some point we're all gonna fall short. When that happens, we gotta remind each other, you're better than that. Remember what the Prophet said. Islam? Because let's not forget, the earth knows that a prophet was sent to us. Let's act like it. Islam? Praise Allah. 37. Did the angel give to the child that was called Jesus a holy name?
Yes, but it cannot be used by those who are slaves to sin.
38. What is an angel?
An angel is a thought of Allah manifested in human flesh.
39. What are angels used for?
Carry messages to the four corners of the world to all nations.
Islam. Anybody ever read the book of Revelations? In the Bible? Never? Praise Allah. That's interesting. Got some studying to do. You just created a homework assignment for y'all later. So appreciate that. Anybody else? Book of Revelations? When you read through that, the term angel is used all through there. And the angels are never sitting still. They're always moving. They always have a duty and a task, right? But according to these two, keys right here, these angels are human. They're human, right? They're not spooks or apparitions. They're humans, going up to the four corners of the world to all nations, all right? 40. What is our prophet to us?
is an angel of Allah who is sent to bring us the everlasting gospel of Allah.
41. What is the everlasting gospel?
It is the saving power that comes from Allah through our ancient fathers by His power.
Islam. 42. What is the covenant of the great God Allah?
Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the earth, which the Lord thy God Allah has given thee.
Islam. 43. At what age did Jesus begin to teach?
At the age of 12,
44. Where did he teach?
India, Africa, and Europe.
45. How long did he teach?
18 years.
46. What did Jesus say that would make you free?
Truth.
47. What is truth?
Truth is art.
48. What is art?
Art is Allah.
49. Can truth change?
Truth cannot change or pass away.
That's an interesting thing about truth. You don't really have to, like, if somebody asks you to recount a story and you're telling the truth, you can tell that story the same way for 10 years straight and it won't change. Islam? If we're telling other than that, then there's going to be some discrepancies. Because you got to remember where you last left off, and you understand what I'm saying? Right. So the prophet is calling us to a way of life too, right? So we can be consistent, right? Not inconstant, but consistent or constant. Islam says 50. What other name do we give to truth?
Holy breath.
51. What have you to say about the holy breath?
All we can say is it is great, it is good, it was, it is, and evermore to be.
Islam. Why does it say all we can say? Islam.
Have we not realized because there's nothing more to say?
That's one aspect.
That is all.
Islam. That's one aspect. Anyone else? She's letting me live. She's being humble. Thank you, sister. Anyone else? Yes.
Also, you can't necessarily, I think, describe, but I'm not sure the word, but you can't necessarily fathom the depth
Right.
of Allah, the Holy Breath. So all we can say is,
Islam. Using our Quran, you can't circumscribe the thoughts of Allah. You can't circumscribe. How you going to exactly define what Allah is? Even us using that name is for us and our own understanding. You know what I'm saying? Because how do you put a word on all that exists and that doesn't exist? Because nothing is still a thing. Islam.
Islam. Heaven already risen.
Yes, sir.
It's a camelback. It says all that we can say. So no matter how many ways you say it, it's still describing whatever, all that was, is, and ever wants to be.
Islam.
It's in a million kind of ways. It's still going to lead back to, referencing, that one, that infinite.
Islam. Islam. Powerful. Powerful. And that, we are a descendant of that. Do you understand what I'm saying? So how dare we say I can't? How dare we limit ourselves? You understand what I'm saying? Like, we've done so much with very little. Where does that power come from? How do we survive slavery? Like, do y'all really know what that was? Lesser peoples would not have survived that. Lesser people didn't survive that. It's people that went through, similitudes of that and were wiped out. But we're still here to tell the story and teach the lesson. Islam, and the world is looking at us like I was watching something earlier. Who was it? I think it was I'm a hip hop head. I want to say it was Ghostface or one of the rappers. He was saying he was in Dubai, and when he got off the plane, the sheiks of Dubai picked him up and lifted him like, oh, he's back, he has returned, and treated like a sultan. He was like, why are they doing this? But they know who you are, and it ain't because the album you just dropped. It ain't got nothing to do with that, right? It's because they know the ancestry, and they know the ones that the ones that are in those countries, they know that they're not the true inhabitants of that. You are. Islam. We just had one of our Sheikh brothers. He was in Ghana. Sierra Leone. Thank you, Mo. Had all white on with his fez on, and they cheering him. He was, man. You know us when we got that Moses, that tassel was swinging, that Moses. Had his red fez on. Looking like we're supposed to look when we go around the world, amongst our brothers and sisters and our children. Islam, y'all know y'all got a lot of children around the world y'all don't claim, right?
Islam.
Yeah, so most Americans might be some of the biggest deadbeat dads and mamas on earth. You know what I mean? Including the European. Y'all don't like to claim him, but where did he come from?
Islam.
Yeah, that's us too. Islam? Let's move forward. It says, where we leave off at? 52? At what place on earth was the physical part of man formed?
In the Garden of Eden.
53. Where is the Garden of Eden?
In the land of Canaan, in the city of Mecca.
54. What is the modern name for the Garden of Eden?
Mecca.
55. What is the name of the first physical man?
The name cannot be used only by executive rulers of the AC of the MST of A.
56. What are the words AC of the MST of A?
Adept chamber of the Moorish Science Temple of America, third heaven.
Islam. Why does an adept chamber exist in the Moorish Science Temple of America? Islam.
Similar to us comparing the Sunday school or the one-on-ones, beyond the one-on-ones for those who want to get into depth knowledge or dig deeper into the keys.
Islam. What does the word adept mean? Anybody? Someone who is what? Smile. You're going to say something eventually. Islam. Here we go.
Someone who has dedicated their life towards the cause to study under a
Islam. To camel back on that, someone who is skillfully proficient. Another definition gives one who has lived their life by strict sacrifice and adherence to certain very particular rules. Islam. So we talked about the compass earlier. The circle that the adept lives within is a very small circle. It's not very broad. It's very small. It's a lot of things we're not permitted to do. Islam. I'm gonna show you your prophet. You're actually, if you were holding this in your hand, this right here is the adept manual, and you have it in your hands. So there's a lesson there. Islam Moors, go in there and unlock those things and work to becoming it, and you will become skillfully proficient. And then later you get further instruction on what you're actually holding. Islam, if that's in your destiny. Islam, praise Allah. 57. Who were Adam and Eve?
They are the mothers and fathers of the human family, Asiatic and
58. Where did they go?
They went into Asia.
59. What is the modern name given to their children?
Asiatic.
60. Who is guarding the holy city of Mecca today to keep the unbelievers away?
Angels.
61. What is the modern name for those angels?
Asiatic.
62. What is the shade of their skin?
Olive.
63. Are the Moorish Americans any relation to those angels?
Yes, we all have the same father and mother.
64. Give 5 names that are given to the descendants of Adam and Eve.
Lucifer, Satan, devil, dragon, and beast.
65. What is the devil sometimes called?
The lower self.
66. How many selves are there?
2.
67. Name them.
High self and lower self.
68. What people represent the higher self?
The angels who protect the holy city of Mecca.
69. What people represent the lower self?
Those who are cast out of the holy city of Mecca, those who serve their teacher.
70. What is the higher self?
The higher self is the mother of virtues and the harmonies of life, and breeds justice, mercy, love, and right.
So, years ago we used to get this question. It hasn't come up lately. But we would get the question, well, why is Allah the father of the universe? What about the mother? Islam? Because as a people of balance, both of those polarities, both of those principles have to exist. Anybody ever heard of the 7 hermetic laws? I've heard of this? Correspondence, polarity, gender, so on and so forth, right? Well, gender is one of them. And it says in that text, there's a book called the Kabbalion, which has all 7 in there. And then in there it says the principle of gender exists on all planes of life, right? May not be as we understand it in this plane, but it exists throughout, all right? So in the aspect of the higher self is the mother of virtues and the harmonies of life and breeds justice, mercy, love, and life. That's that principle there, right? So when you get to talking about mercy, mercy is not a masculine principle. It's not. We can learn mercy, but generally it's not. For men to learn mercy, we have to tap into our X chromosome because we have one, right? To learn how to yield, because our natural harmonic is to initiate, to take control of situations, and so on and so forth, right? But the mercy aspect, to be merciful, right? Like example, there's a thing, kind of like you learn in martial arts. There's a power in knowing that you can do something to somebody and don't do it. Restraint, right? Which is what virtue, temperance, right? So there's a power in knowing that this person doesn't even know what's about to happen to them. But you know what? Praise Allah, I'm going to yield. That's this symbol right here. You know what I'm saying? You're deflecting negative energy. Islam was. You'll see this. Anybody ever seen it's like it's a charm that people wear on necklaces, and it's this right here, but it's upside down. It's called a what? Oh, I didn't know you speak Arabic. Because the word khamsa means 5. Islam. You know, you'll see it all through Morocco. You'll see it all through Israel, right? Any of the Asiatic cultures, you'll see that, right? Because they say this is what deflects away what they call the evil eye. Islam. Anybody ever heard of a religion called Jainism? Yes, it's the offshoot of Hinduism. Jainism. I wish I would take notes because this is extra studies. But when you look up the emblem for Jainism, it's this right here. Yeah, you'll see, it's a very interesting study. All right. 71. Can the higher self pass away?
No.
72. Why?
Because it is Allah and man.
73. What does the lower self breed?
Hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harm.
74. What did the higher self say to the lower self at one time when he met him?
Where are you going, Satan?
75. What was the answer that the lower self gave to the higher self?
I am going to and fro the earth, seeking whom I may devour.
76. Has he finished his task of devouring?
Yes.
77. When was his time declared out?
We nailed Jesus on the cross.
78. What are the last words Jesus uttered?
It is finished.
79. What did he have reference to?
He had reference to the end of Satan.
80. Did Jesus say that he would return to conquer him?
Yes.
81. What is the name of the person into whom Jesus was first reincarnated?
Prophet Muhammad the Conqueror.
82. Was Satan to be bound then?
Satan was to be bound in bars.
83. When was the head of Satan taken off?
1453.
This is Islam. 84. By whom?
By Muhammad.
Anybody know any history of the Muhammad they're referencing in that question? They call him in Turkish history Mehmet II. M-E-H-M-E-T. The second. There's actually a movie on YouTube. It's called The Fall of Constantinople. It's a whole movie about that key writer. You understand? When the Roman Empire was split in two halves because it was too big, the eastern half of the Roman Empire was Constantinople. The western part was Rome, right? Mehmet II, after I think it was like 24 people that tried before him and couldn't do it, but he was actually able to do it because it was a walled city. And I think it had like 6 walls that surrounded it, and they built these large cannons, and they were able to blow apart the walls and so on and so forth, and take over the city and actually snatch the Roman flag down and hoist the flag of Islam. All right. Anybody ever seen the Hagia Sophia Mosque? Anybody seen this? One of the most beautiful mosques in the world, but it used to be a cathedral. When the Muslims got it, we turned it into a mosque. You see what I'm saying? It's so beautiful, they actually used it in Star Wars as one of the temples on another planet somewhere, But it's actually beautiful. Let's move forward. 85. Name some of the marks that were put upon the Moors of Northwest by the European nation in 1774. Now, there's a narrative that states we were in slavery 400 years. There's a narrative that says we were in slavery 300 years. According to Prophet Noble Drew Ali, and you had to utilize the Prophet's written records, when was the era of slavery for us, we, the Moorish Americans? Between what years? Islam, Brother Mark back. Islam, are you working? Now, in this question right here, it says name some of the marks that were put upon the Moors of Northwest by the European nations in 1774. So what's the the difference between 1774 and 1779? Yes.
1774
Okay, but notice that. Go back and reread the question. What does that question tell you about the Moors and how they saw themselves? The question, not the answer. The question. It says, name some of the marks that were put upon who? The Moors. So at that point, we still self-identify as Moors. We still knew who we were, right? But they started the process in written records to write us down as Negro, Black, and Colored. By the time you come down to 1779, that's when those marks became names. Because the slave name is Negro, Black, and Colored. It's not William Smith, Jones, and Johnson. Those are European names. Negro, Black, and Colored is the slave name. Islam? And it became a matter of written record from 1779 until 1865. After 1865, we were still supposed to go back and become a nation again. But we didn't. We had everything strict. We didn't know. That's why a prophet had to come to us, right? To teach us how to reorganize ourselves as a nation again. Islam? Praise Allah. And also, anybody ever heard of the European name Blumenbach? Johann Blumenbach, what did he do? What did he institute?
Created the caste system,
What kind of caste system?
race.
Well, he didn't create the caste system. Like, we ain't gonna put that on that European.
He didn't create.
That started with the Asiatic nations. We did that. But in terms of, well, in America, identifying as what?
Black and white.
Or Negroid, Caucasoid, Mongoloid, so on and so forth.
Through the
Which-
cranial size
Right.
research.
Exactly.
and stratification.
Exactly, you know. Basically trying to find ways to make Asiatics inferior scientifically. Islam wars? That also started in the year 1779. Islam? All right, praise Allah. Key 86, we'll read together. Negro, a name given to a river in West Africa by Moors because it contains black water. So clearly we had to still be in power then, right? Because we were naming rivers, right? You know, it tells you who's in power now because you can look at street names and so on and so forth, and it doesn't reflect your culture. Islam, right? And that was something given to Adam that he would be able to name creation, right? So that's part of your birthright, to be able to name all the land you survey. Islam? 87, what is meant by the word black?
Black, according to science, means death.
88, what does the word colored mean?
Color means anything that has been painted, stained, varnished, or dyed.
89, what does Ethiopia mean?
Ethiopia means something divine.
90, can a man be Negro, black, colored, or Ethiopian?
No,
91, why?
because man is made in the image and the likeness of God.
Islam. 92, what title does Satan give himself? You know, generally in older Asiatic cultures, when it came time for a child to be born, you know, generally it was the elders of the tribe or whoever if it was like where they had priesthoods and so on and so forth, generally they would bring it, you know, to the priest, and the priest would monitor the child for a while before a name was even issued. In ancient Israel, a child wasn't given a name until 8 days after its birth, because they're, you know, everything about them was watched to see what kind of attributes, you know, the child exhibited, and that would determine its name, right? You know, names are vibrations. Vibrations shape things into thought and matter. Islam? You know? So you want to be very careful what you call yourself. That's why we had to get that Negro, black, and colored identifying as that, because it's not only a name, it's also principles. Islam? You don't want to be shaped by those principles. That's what we're saying out there now. Islam? Praise Allah, let's move forward, right? 93, will you define the word white?
White means purity, purity means God, and God means ruler of the land.
94, to whom do we refer to at times as being the great God? Why does it say at times? Islam.
Just based on feeling, because he has other names.
That's strong.
By other attributes.
Islam. How about if you propagating the faith to someone who has no idea what Islamism is, and you use the name Allah? Are they going to know what you're talking about?
No.
If you use the term great God, would they know what you're talking about? They'll have an idea. Would they would have an idea? A little closer, right? And then you can from that plane of thought, you can work them to your understanding. Islam. 95, is the devil made in the image and likeness of Allah?
No.
Let's try that again. Let's try that again. Get a little unity going on. 95, is the devil made in the image and likeness of Allah?
No, he is the shadow of our Lord himself, and will pass away.
96, who made the devil?
Elohim.
97, who is Elohim?
Elohim is the seven created spirits that created everything that ever was, is, and ever wants to be.
98, what is Elohim sometimes called?
The seven eyes of Allah.
Brother Myrick Bay, did you have a question, Mo? I thought I saw your hand. All's well. 99, how many days are in the circle?
7 days.
Key 100, how many days are in a creation?
7 days.
Key 101, according to science, how many days are in a year?
7 days.
Praise Allah. Islam Morris, are there any questions based on the Quran questionnaire? Islam.
Just for clarification, between the Muhammad the Conqueror and Muhammad Kings, just my own clarification. So Muhammad the Conqueror, I guess, was a sultan or ruler in Morocco.
No. Muhammad the Conqueror is actually the Prophet Muhammad that we refer to. A couple reasons we call him Muhammad the Conqueror. You know, one, he was able to conquer self, number one. Two, he was able to conquer. He was sent to the people of Arabia. He was from the city of Mecca. He was persecuted by the people he was sent to. Happens to all prophets. At first, he sent his people to seek asylum. First, first to the land of Ethiopia, back then called Abyssinia. When they got there, the king of Abyssinia, who's called the Negus, they asked the Negus asked them, said, well, what is this new religion, that you're talking about, new to him? And he said, quote me some verses from the scripture. And when they quoted it, he was a Christian. And it sounded just like the teachings of Jesus. He said, you can stay. And he protected them against those who were trying to kill them. Later, they went to a city called Yathrib, which later became called Medina, right? They stayed there for a number of years, and he united a bunch of tribes that were there, after which they went back and took Mecca. It was 10,000 of them, all dressed in all white. They were able to go take Mecca back and didn't have to use their swords in order to take it back. The people in the city just surrendered, and then they took the Mecca back, destroyed all the idols, and established Islam, or Islamism in the city of Mecca. So he was called Muhammad the Conqueror because he conquered from a higher plane of thought, not a carnal plane of thought. Now, what the European does when you study history, if you Google that, they call Muhammad the Conqueror Mehmet II, right? Yeah, so when you Google that, it's going to bring up Muhammad 1453 because he took it by force. So in European psychology, if you take it by force, that makes you a conqueror, not the fact that you conquered through love. You understand what I'm saying? So that's the the thing. So when you get to researching it, you have to remember the Moorish context of Muhammad the Conqueror is Prophet Muhammad. Okay. Yeah, Prophet Muhammad of Arabia.
And so the second Muhammad is
Mehmet II.
the second Muhammad is
1453 Byzantine. All you have to do is look at the timelines and it'll let you know. Prophet Muhammad was born year 570, past 632. Mehmet the Conqueror conquered Constantinople in the year 1453.
That's the beginning of present-day Turkey?
No. Modern day Turkey, which is the Republic, started with a dude named Kemal Ataturk. That was actually during the time of the Prophet, Noble Ali. That was in the 20s. And, that's when they, outlawed the fez, started wearing European clothes. All of that's around that same time period. Islam. Any other questions? Praise Allah. Islam.
Very symbolism of case of the questionnaire. And I was wondering if God relaxed.
That's the in chapter 3, when it talks about the murky ethers. Prophet stepping out of the murky ethers, or what they call the netherworld, where there's, like even in, when they talk about crime, they're talking about an underworld, right? But the underworld is funny when they say that, because unless you're a part of that world, you don't really see everything that goes on. You know what I'm saying? So you'll be out here moving in the light, right? But then there's another group of people simultaneously with you moving in the dark. But unless you're a part of that vibration or that ether, you won't really know. You know what I'm saying? The Prophet Noble Ali was, pulling us out of that murky ether, by reintroducing us to our higher selves. We have to remember that most people that you're going to come across have never been introduced to that higher self. Thus, they don't know who they are. They're carrying out a program which is based on impulse, right? You go in grocery stores, you take children, you do all your shopping, you come in, take the cart, you pull up to the register, and they put all the little candy and all the little goodies and stuff at child height, right? Because those are all what they call the impulse items, right? Children, they don't, not necessarily, unless you're dealing with some advanced children, well, of which they are, all right? The average children, when they see that candy bar, they see them Tic Tacs or whatever, oh, mommy, can I have? Oh, can I have? But how many adults do you see that function in that same capacity? Because again, it depends on too. We don't know how many times a person has reincarnated. So it's some souls, it's their first, second time here. So they're still amazed by the stuff they see down here. Then there's some of us, I like to put myself in that because I get very bored with the manifest. You wanna go out this weekend? Why? What we gonna do? Same stuff we did last week? We gonna go out to eat? What we gonna eat? The same stuff with some different sauce on it. Cut it different, prepared, but it's the same stuff. How many times you gonna eat chicken? How many ways can a chicken be seasoned? Islam? So that's what I'm saying. So how is it that the manifest is we still excited by it? Islam, at a certain point we gotta mature, and now, because you came down here supposed to be the Lord of the plane of the manifest. We're supposed to be masters down here. So there's a phrase that says, one of my elders taught me, he says, he who controls your desires controls you, right? Check this out, right? Imagine if, right? So, I came up during the crack era, right? Imagine if our people knew who they were when they dropped crack in our neighborhoods. We would have never used it. It could have been there in an abundance and we would have never used it. Like, that's beneath me, I'm not. But when you don't know who you are and your environment's stressful, a brother taught me one time, he said, people use drugs because they can't afford vacations. Because they're trying to escape, right? So, they, in their understanding, the easiest and cheapest way for me to escape is to use this drug, right? Not knowing all they had to do is call on the holy breath. You want to travel? You can close your eyes and call on that deep breath and there's a whole nother world inside of you. Islam? Not being spooky, try it sometimes. Islam? Like I've mentioned this before in other meetings. You can stare in the mirror long enough and look in your eyes and you'll feel a presence looking at you from behind your eyeballs. That's you, not the thing that you wash to get the cold out and the teeth. No, that's a part of you. You know what I'm saying? But that's measured up by time. That's gonna fall one day, right? The soul, which you're using to access thinking, understanding, reasoning, that's gonna fall one day. Islam? But that spirit that's part of Allah, it's not gonna fall. It's eternal. It's a part of the all, and that's what we're trying to access. Islam. I only have 3 minutes, which Allah took it a different direction. Praise Allah. Did you have a question, Mo? Go ahead, Mo.
What's the difference between the fez and the flatbush?
So, different languages, right? Well, same language, but different understandings. So the fez, they're both the same headdress, but there's different adaptations of each. So when you go to Morocco today, they have a shorter fez that they wear. Theirs is like 5 inches tall, 4 to 5 inches tall. Tartar bush can be used not just for fez, for what we identify as the fez. It can also be used for any other kind of hat as well. You see what I'm saying? So fez, we use that term because it's very specific to not only the fez, this 7.5 inches tall, 12-inch tassel, unbound. So, it's a very specific thing. It also, delineates a city that's in Morocco that goes back to our forefathers, that goes back to the Moorish Empire. Islam, when you Google the word fez, they'll actually bring up a Turkish headdress. You'll hear this, right? But the Moorish Empire and the Ottoman Empire were operating simultaneously. But what happened was the Moors, because of fighting each other, right, end up getting overthrown while the Ottomans kept going, right? So in the Common Era, right, the term Ottoman headdress for fez became applied to the Ottomans because their era came more so into like I said, they didn't stop being an empire until 1920 something. You see what I'm saying? To the point that when the prophet told the Moors, the prophet is reported to have told the Moors, he said, put your fezzes on, go downtown, Chicago, and when you come back, tell me what they said, what the people said that's out there. And they did it, and they came back. When they came back, the prophet said, well, what'd they say? They said, the Turks are coming. Why would they identify this headdress with the Turks? Because and that was the contemporary history they were in, right? Also, what did the Turks represent? The Turks represented the conquering of Europe. Islam? Now, you have the Turks mentioned in your Quran, right? What does chapter 45 refer to the Turks as? When you understand that, you'll see why the prophet gave this headdress to you and what we're supposed to be doing with our Islamism. Chapter 45, go down to the verse where it talks about the Turks. So the Turks are and it says 2 words.
The Turks are the true descendants of Hagar, who are the chief protectors of the Islamic creed of Mecca.
Mm-hmm. Islam.
The angels.
That part.
The
Right?
angels who protect.
Holy Islam. Chief, not just protectors, but chief protectors.
Mm-hmm.
Islam. So we're running around that. Like example, this is an experiment I want to do one day.
Can I continue?
Please, go ahead.
Beginning from Muhammad I,
Mm-hmm.
the founder of the uniting of Islam, by the command of the great universal God, Allah.
Islam. So it didn't say he founded Islam. He founded the uniting of it in that landmass, right? There's a restaurant here in Atlanta called, well, I think it's in Decatur, Cafe in Istanbul. Y'all heard of this? Okay, it's a Turkish restaurant. I want us to put all our Moorish everything on. Y'all know we got some stuff we can put on, right? I want us to put all that stuff on and go to Cafe Istanbul. And I want those of you whose last names is Bey, when you introduce yourselves, I want you to give them that Bey and watch how they respond. Islam, because the name Bey is still used amongst them, right? The name Bey actually means governor. Islam. when they see you walking with that fez, they're gonna be like, because that was outlawed for them. So to see us in America, because you know, a lot of times when Arabs and other foreign nationals that are Muslim come over here to America, some of them leave their religious concepts behind. Like example, you ever go to a gas station that's owned by Arabs, and they're selling like pork and cigarettes and liquor and everything, and you might come in with some holy garment on and be like, they might attempt to try to question you about your religion. But I'm like, dude, you selling all kind of swine, and you gonna ask me about my religion? You know what I'm saying? You know, but it's the haughtiness, the arrogance where they'll think that they, they own Islam and they don't. You know, and that's how y'all got to carry this thing. This don't belong to you. You're a part of it, but you don't own it. You know, there's more Muslims in Indonesia than there is in Arabia. More in Africa than it is Arabia. Islam, but no, the only reason why people think that that's the case is because of the oil money. You got a question, Mark? All's well, Islam. Praise Allah. Last thought, when I was doing, it was a phrase up there before I got the erasing and stuff, and that phrase was family, the cornerstone to nation building. Can anybody tell me what is a cornerstone? What's a corner? I ain't gonna do you like that, Bob. What is a cornerstone? Y'all heard the term before? Islam. Go ahead. Okay, Islam. You don't have to wait, Mo. What did John say? Why need I wait? Go ahead demonstrate, Mo.
I think of an ark, building an ark.
Okay.
The cornerstone is that key, that's the last stone that built.
Now that specifically, you're not wrong per se, but that specifically is called a keystone, right? You know how, what is Georgia, the what state? The peach state? Okay. What is Pennsylvania called? Anybody know? That's the city, Philadelphia, city of brotherly love. But what is the state called? The what kind of state? The Keystone State. The Keystone State. But a cornerstone is a stone that's placed in the corner of a building, right? That joins two walls, right? Okay, so as it's joining two walls, what kind of angle is that? 90-degree angle, which is also called a something angle. Islam. How did I know? Praise Allah, right? Okay, Islam, you can go. You can pass. But a right angle. So the cornerstone, what it does, by joining two walls, right? It's joining two principles together, right? So what kind of movement do we call this? A Moorish, divine, and national movement. Two principles together, right? Anybody ever heard the term turning the corner? You ever heard this before? Somebody Google that for me. Type in turning the corner and type in definition after that. Turning the corner definition. Turning the corner definition. Islam?
To get past the most difficult area or period of something and begin to improve.
Islam, right? So, that's almost the symbolism of the cornerstone, right? Bringing one wall, making it join with another, or one principle to connect with another, right? One of the key aspects to help us as a race turn the corner is the family. Islam. Why Prophet Noble Drew Ali, all his writings, all of those principles and virtues that he's talking about, he's espousing, is designed to bring the family unit together. In Islamism, we fight to keep our families together. You understand what I'm saying? Because our families are under attack, right? By outside forces. Islam? And we have to do everything we can to keep that together. I don't care, look, within the realms of the higher self, I don't care what it takes. Long as we maintain that structure, we do what we gotta do. Islam? Because when you're talking about nation building, there is no nation without the families. It can't exist. When you Google cornerstone, right? There's about 11 immediate spots you're gonna find in the Bible where it talks about this was the cornerstone, that was the cornerstone. Different ways they can be approached, right? And when you're talking about nation building, that happens one family at a time. Islam. When you look at how the prophet was able to grow at the rate that he grew, you know how big families were back in the 20s? My mother was born in the 40s and she was one of 9. So there's families back in the 20s that had 20 children. Islam. So imagine you had 10 families of that size that joined a temple. You see the kind of numbers you're looking at? And if everyone from mother, father, and children had a nationality card. Now you're able to leverage that for political and economic power that you need. Islam? So we need the numbers, but the only way to get the numbers is if you bring one at a time. Is cool because that's quality, right? Because that gives you the time to make sure the quality is there, right? But like example, the Assistant Grand Sheikh and I have been talking, and the Grand Secretary, and we've been talking about, we have new politicians in office now, and there's another midterm election coming up, May 24th. But we need to establish relationships with them, right? But see, politicians think in terms of constituencies and votes, which means numbers, right? We can't invite a politician out to a room like this. He's gonna be like, it's not worth my time. Islam, right? So, we have to work the Prophet's degrees real quick. Anybody know, what were the hours that the temple was open? How many days was the temple open when the Prophet was alive? Was it just Friday, Sunday, and Wednesday? Wednesday back then was Quran class. How many days was the temple open? Anybody know? 7 days, right? Sound familiar, right? 7 days. And someone, during that time, you could come and take out a nationality card every day of the week. Now, what was the purpose of that, right? Unity Hall, 3140 Indiana Avenue, Chicago, Illinois. Seats about 1,500 people. It's a big building, but the Prophet had, he issued nationality cards to over 3,000 people. So clearly all of them weren't attending the meetings, right? But when the Prophet was demonstrating his political program, right? Part of the understanding when your nationality card was issued, can we depend on you when we're doing our political stuff? And the people said, of course, because here's the type of stuff they were doing. Y'all have heard of the Great Migration? What was the Great Migration? Which part of the country to which part of the country?
From the south, migrating north.
North and where? Where else? So I consider north like the eastern. I'm biased. Right, the Midwest. Right. I'm biased. But what they were doing was they were getting. But this was the Moorish Science Temple of America, along with other Asiatic civic organizations. They were chartering buses, sending to the south, and getting our people out of the south and bringing them up there. When they'd come up, they'd come up to Indiana, to Unity Hall, Indiana Avenue. That's okay. Well, you need employment. Okay. Talk to brother so-and-so over there. He can find you employment. Need a place to live? Talk to brother or sister so-and-so. She get you residence. Islam, kind of similar to how our Mexican brothers and sisters are doing now. Islam wars. So, this is all a part of the plan that we have to execute, right? As knowing your nationality and all that history and all that stuff that attaches to that, that's to serve that end, but that's not the end all. The end all is to take everything that we know and bring it into the realm of the manifest, right? To bring it from nationality and ideal to nationality and fact, right? Right now we're in nationality and ideal, but we need some tangibles to be able to point people to say, okay, like our young people need jobs so they can stop selling drugs and stuff like that. For those that do that. But look, how much do you make a week? I make X amount of whatever a week. Okay, if I can match that, would you stop what you're doing right now? That's power. When you have the power to change people's lives and conditions, that's power. You see? And that's what Prophet Noble Duality was all about. And I tell you, people really got this messed up. I saw a post, and I'm saying this in closing. I saw a post earlier today, and it said, how many of you out there want to be Moorish, but don't like the idea of having to wear the fez and turban and being a part of Islam? And he went to a whole bunch of like Aboriginal and indigenous this and Native American tribe this and okay, oh that's cool, but why dissect the Prophet's movement just to have it your way? If it was successful when he did it. Islam wars, for me it's ungrateful and it just doesn't make sense. Islam. So that's our demonstration right there. Are there any last questions, comments, or concerns, or statements? Yes, please, sister. If you could speak up just for the camera. All's well. No, it's mighty though.
When it says, he who controls your desires controls you.
Yes.
The he part, is that referring to the higher self or the lower self or the thing itself?
Well, in the manifest, the higher and the lower self are in the same form, right? So, there's that. That's almost like a paradox type situation, right? For something that's eternal to dwell in something finite. So when you get this thing of how the Elohim make devil, it was creating that paradox, right? So now, the desire aspect, let me go to chapter 3. Y'all all right? Islam. Right? Let's talk about, let's go down to verse 11, on page 7. The lower self breeds hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harms. The higher self is the mother of virtues and the harmonies of life. The lower self is rich in promises, but poor in blessedness and peace. It offers pleasure, joy, and satisfying gain, but gives unrest, misery, and death. Now let's stop there. So desire, right? That's the thing about desire. So desire is you wanting a particular thing. Now that thing, you know, is obviously something in the finite, right? We'll want it, but what is the purpose behind why we want it? You know, like our prophet says, it is not in the possessing of things, but knowing to use them, right? So, like an example, I've heard Moses say, as a matter of fact, I just said it. You know, we need numbers, right? Okay, but in us saying that we need that, what is our purpose in saying that we need it? You know, is it just for self-gratification to say, look how many of us, and ego and vanity, or is it really to leverage it for something that's going to benefit those who are without? That's the delineation between the higher and lower self, and in terms of desire, if that makes sense, right? It goes on, it says, speaking again about the lower self, 13, it gives men apples that are lovely to the eye and pleasant to the smell. So now we're talking about your sense perceptions, right? The eye and smell, right? It says, their cores are full of bitterness and gall, right? If you would ask me what to study, I would say yourselves, and you will have studied them, and then ask me what to study, I would say yourselves, right? And 15, he who knows well his lower self knows the illusions of the world. Let me pause there. So to know well something, you have to study it. The only way you can study a thing, sometimes you got to study a thing once we've already made a mistake. And then you study the mistake, because we're scientists, right? So a mistake happens, and now you say, okay, you remove the emotion out of it. Why did I do that? You question it. Why did I perform under, you know, because I could have said no, but I didn't. And if I didn't, why? Okay? And then, you know, then you crack your Quran open, then you go, you know, and see what aspect of yourself caused you to yield to that, or anyone for that matter. Islam? All right? And then let me continue that. I'll take it from the top. 15, he who knows well his lower self knows the illusions of the world, knows of the things that pass away, and he who knows his higher self knows Allah, knows well the things that cannot pass away. Notice it didn't say you learn Allah by your lower self, right? It says you learn Allah through your higher self. Islam? Moving forward. Thrice blessed is the man that has made purity and love his very own. And when the usage of the term man there is that, like our Supreme Grand, she teaches that, you know, there are different manifest variations of each of the 5 kingdoms that fell. So it's manifest variations of plant, you know, of earth, of protoplasm, of man, and of beast, right? Man and woman are manifest variations of one another. You know, technically we're the same spirit, just manifest variations in this plane, so we could further study self through duality. Islam? And then it says, and at the end of 15 it says, knows well the things that cannot pass away. Thrice blessed is the man who has made purity and love his very own. He has been ransomed from the perils of the lower self and is himself his higher self, right? So it says ransom, you know what I'm saying? Almost like, you know, we're being held hostage by our lower self almost. You see what I'm saying? And we have to ransom our higher self from that. Because through the whole thing, right, your higher self is communicating instructions to you the entire time, right? But we'll bury that because of what we're used to. You understand what I'm saying? Sometimes we'll be used to a particular thing, whether it works for us or not. We're accustomed to that. You understand what I'm saying? You know, but once we get these instructions and they're able to figure out the purity of the higher self and be like, wow, that's the real me. That's been the real me the whole time. You see what I'm saying? You know, and that's why, you know, the prophet tells us, you know, several times, attend your meetings promptly so we can come and get these instructions, because we're, as a race, we're sick. Islam? All right? And then I have to read 17, and that's it. Men seek salvation from an evil that deems a living monster of the netherworld, and they have gods that are but demons in disguise, all powerful, yet full of jealousy and hate and lust. You see? So again, further, so those are all, if you go through all those attributes, that's giving you the attributes of the lower self, right? So it's not just hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything. Part of the everything that harms is the ones that are mentioned that are not in that definition, right? So it's a very intricate study, but it can only be done willingly. You can't compel somebody to do better. You can't. That's not how this manifest was set up. It has to be voluntary. You see? So, Moors, with that, we're going to go ahead and lower the meeting. Islam? Islam. Moorish Science Temple of America, Prophet Noble Duality founder, the Divine Proclamation, January 1929. Prophet warns all Muslim governors ordered to read proclamation at each meeting. I hereby inform all members that they must end all radical agitating speeches while at work, in their homes, or on the streets. We are for peace and not destruction. Stop flashing your cards at Europeans. That causes confusion. Remember, your card is for your salvation. Failure to obey these orders will be of severe consequence. We are for love, truth, peace, and freedom, and when these principles are violated, justice must then take its course. Any member or group of members who hold malicious feelings towards the temple or the prophet or violate the divine covenant of the Moorish movement will receive their reward from Allah for their unjust deeds. All true Moors will and must obey the law as laid down to them by their prophet. If they lose confidence in their prophet, they should turn in their card and button, cease wearing their turban or fez, and return to the state where I, the prophet, found you. This is a holy and divine movement founded by the prophet Noble Duality. And if the prophet is not right, the temple is not right. Prophet therefore sending out the divine plea to all Moorish Americans that they do their part in protecting their prophet and the temple. This is an everlasting movement founded by the prophet through the will of Allah to redeem his people from their sins. By order of Prophet Noble Duality. Islam? Islam? Islam. Please, I'd like to ask everyone to please rise, face the east, hold your feet at a 45-degree angle, 5 on the left, 2 on the right, invoking the sacred presence of the 7 Elohim that created everything that ever was, is, and evermore to be. We'll do the Moorish American prayer together, after which I'll do the Prophet's closing prayer. Islam Moors, please repeat after me. Allah, Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day. Through his holy prophet, Duality. Amen. Allah, bind our hearts and minds back to our ancient forefathers' divine creed and principles. This we ask in thy holy name and the 7 Elohim. Amen. Islam Moors. Praise Allah. Islam, Brother Major. Islam.